of water. Some of the other research has shown families where children and their parents have encircled a vial of water in a room that has never been found to crystallize, again, some of the very highly polluted and toxic water. And what they do, they make a game out of it. The children, they send love to the water. They say, "We love you, water. We appreciate you, water. Thank you, water, for what you bring to our world and our lives." And in that innocence, they are eliciting these genuine states of emotion. And as the research continues, it is precisely these vials of water that have received this kind of energy from the children and their families, feelings that the ancients called prayer, that the water begins to crystallize into beautiful, symmetrical, very clear forms, showing once again that there's a direct effect between what we feel in our bodies and what's happening in the world beyond our bodies. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, very poignant example of how each of us has an opportunity to participate, not to control and manipulate, but rather participate in the events of our world, the events of our lives, our families, our communities, and our bodies through the field that links all in creation. One of the powerful principles, most powerful principles regarding the way this field works is the fact that the field appears to be holographic in nature. The definition of a hologram is that it's a pattern. No matter how finely divided the pattern is, the whole remains, even in the smallest portion. For example, a few years ago there were bookmarks, shiny little foil strips, and when they were shown in direct light, that had an image of a rose fully in bloom, or the image of Mother Mary, or the image of a dolphin jumping over a pyramid. And in these bookmarks, if they were truly holograms, you could take and cut them into the smallest pieces, and then take the smallest one of those and cut it again, and look at it under magnification, and the entire pattern would still remain even in the smallest piece. And I share this principle now because it appears that consciousness, our consciousness through this field, works precisely this way. What it means is that all of us, as smaller portions of a greater pattern, are connected. And the seemingly little things that we do in our lives, day in and day out, the way we respond to one another at the family dinner table during our conversations, the way that we feel about the 6 o'clock news, the way that we respond to a driver that cuts us off on the freeway just before we get to our exit, in those seemingly insignificant moments of life, we are actually having a conversation with this field, the quantum hologram, the mind of God, individually. And when we put all of our little conversations together, that becomes the collective answer. The field mirrors back our collective love, our collective appreciation and gratitude, or our collective anger and rage and fear. So as we watch the events in our lives and our world unfold, and we ask ourselves, why are these things happening? And how can these things happen the way we see them? We might want to keep these principles in mind and ask yourself, do you believe, do you see these principles that I've just described? Do you see them playing out in the world around you? And if so, if the principle works in one direction, it works in the other direction. As we begin to feel the feelings of the things that we choose to experience in our lives and our world, by definition, the hologram must mirror those things back to us. I hear from so many people that when we offer our prayers from within our bodies, that they need to be sent to the place that we choose for them to be. If we want prayers in the Middle East, that we have to send that energy there. Or if we want prayers of healing for our loved ones, that we somehow have to transmit from our bodies to where our loved ones actually are. Well, I know that these principles are well-intentioned. What the hologram says to us is that we don't have to send anything anywhere. It says that when we feel a feeling in our bodies, it already exists everywhere because we are part of that whole. Just like the pattern is complete, no matter how small we cut that bookmark, we are little pieces of this greater hologram, of this greater consciousness. And by virtue of simply feeling and using the energy to create what we choose within our bodies, it already exists everywhere all the time. Maybe you've had this experience. Have you ever gone to pick up the phone to call someone that you have an affinity for and found that they were already on the other end of the line. My mom and I have this experience. I try to call her at least once a week from wherever I am. It's not unusual for me to pick up the phone and find that she's either already there or her line is busy because she's calling me in that very moment. So when that happens, what is it that's occurring? How does the information get from where I am to where she is so that we're having that simultaneous connection? And I know almost everyone has had this experience before. And the quantum hologram, perhaps, the holographic principle, this is the answer to this question. It's because when we feel something in one place, to some degree that feeling is already existing in every other place. And to the degree that we can focus that feeling within our bodies and hone our ability to feel those feelings clearly in our hearts, rather than simply think them in our minds, to that degree we have the opportunity for the kinds of healings that we see in the medicineless hospital, and for the effects that we feel inside of our bodies to be carried beyond our bodies into the world around us. So what does this information say to us today, really, about the way we live our lives and what we see happening in our world? Well, at the very least, what it says is that there's something out there. There's a field, a living intelligence that links, it connects everything in creation, excluding nothing. Whatever we see happening in our world, whatever we have happening in our bodies, we know by virtue of this principle that it's part of everything else. We know that we are linked to the field through what we call thought, feeling, and emotion. And specifically, the feelings in our hearts are the language that speak to the field. It's the language that the field recognizes. The field may not recognize the mental processes of language when we say, "Dear God, please let there be peace in our world." However, the field definitely recognizes the language of the feeling when we feel the feeling in our hearts as if that peace is already there. These are the principles, some of the most subtle and the most empowering principles that were left to us by the ancients in the language of their time. Today, 400 years after the birth of Western science, we're only now beginning to understand precisely the same principles. So while we may not fully understand everything there is to know about this field, where it comes from, or why it's there, we do know enough to apply in our lives the principles that we've seen work under laboratory conditions that the ancients left for us as well. From my perspective, this is a very empowering body of information, because it takes the idea of prayer beyond any religious or spiritual tradition and makes it an inner technology that's open to everyone, regardless of our beliefs, or our lifestyles, or our bloodlines, or our heritage, or how or where we choose to live our lives. What it says to us in every moment of life, we're having a feeling. And by virtue of that feeling, we're communicating to the world around us. So rather than seeing a prayer as something that we do every once in a while, when we'd like to change our world, and then we stop the prayer and get up and walk away, perhaps we can redefine prayer as the way that we feel in our lives, and because we're always feeling in every moment in life, life becomes the prayer. Life becomes the living prayer. We can always have the feelings of peace in our hearts, whether we're driving down the freeway or studying in our classroom or going to the mall or the airport. To some degree, we can feel that feeling of peace. Life becomes the prayer. And as we look at the world around us and we see a world that so many people is changing so very, very fast, some people feel the world is absolutely out of control, feel powerless to do anything about it. These subtle principles remind us that we're part of all that we see. The world around us is nothing more and nothing less than a reflection of what we have become from within. And in the language of those who have come before us, we're reminded that we must become the very things that we choose to experience in life. We must become the peace and the healing, the cooperation, the compassion, the love, the nurturing that we choose to experience in our lives. We must become those very things so that the field has something to mirror back to us. And in that way, we each are given the guidelines, hopefully, to help us to become better people. And as we become better people in that way, we build a better world.